But I think, ultimately I feel like it's a bit of like it's a bit of a like, no, it was all good, man.
So hello everyone. Today our guest is joining us from Japan, which is a new one for us. Blair Winston, thank you so much for joining us. And how's everything going for you?
Dude, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. Things out here in Japan are nice. It's currently about 11 a.m. here. I got up early for this interview because I had, botched the first attempt, unfortunately, because of that time zone differential. But yeah, I'm very honored to be here. Caleb is a friend of mine from back when I'm still in Temple, but just back when I was in the States, he and I worked on some film sets together. And so, when he reached out about the opportunity, I was super, super excited to hop on. I've seen you guys interview my friend Jeb as well. So I was like, oh, okay. So they're doing it big now. So yeah, just super excited to be here and catch up with Caleb. And also, again, nice to meet you, Logan. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we're excited to learn everything about you as well. So yeah, just kind of get us started. Can you explain to everyone, just kind of introduce yourself? Who is Blair Winston?
That's a question that I even am trying to figure out to this very moment. But, I consider myself a, content digital marketer, at least right now where I am in life. I'm a content creator online. I do some video editing here and there. Filmmaker, writer. There's a multitude of creative things I do. I try to keep myself, open to a lot of creative avenues. A creative visionary is kind of the title I like to use.
No, that's cool. That's a lot more fancy sounding than what Caleb calls himself. So,
what does he call himself?
Editor. I don't know.
I edit videos.
I'm just here to edit some videos. If you have any videos your way, send it to me.
We like to have fun. I saw my opportunity for a dig, so I did it.
Digs are always welcome.
What are your hobbies outside of what you do for work?
That's a good question, because I feel like recently, especially as I get older, I've almost felt like I've started to lose touch with those. Being in Japan has been such a great opportunity for me to really, get back in love with some of the things that I fell off of. Like one thing I really love doing is just reading. I've been reading a lot more books. I love reading comics, and, especially in Japan, it's very popular for, manga. And so I've been reading a lot of manga here, from that as well. I've been doing a lot more drawing. Something I used to do a lot when I was a kid, actually, but like as soon as I got like a digital device, I feel like that sucked a lot of those passions out of my, life. And so it's been very nice to kind of get back in touch with those. And, I like being in nature a lot as well. And I like eating. Eating is also very, very fun. There's a lot of good food out here.
Yeah, this kind of ties into our next question, actually. Again, we kind of talked about it a bit off of camera, but tell us about Japan.
Being in Japan has been very, very interesting because, initially it was such an impulsive decision I made back when I was in Philadelphia of just being because something in my life happened. I was going through a breakup and I was like, I need to get away. And so, I knew I had a friend who was doing the Temple Japan program. So I was like, yo, let me know the info. I'm coming with you. And next thing I knew, I was looking my flight ticket, and as it got closer, I was really like, holy crap, this is actually happening. Being out here has been a very, very just clarifying experience. This is my first time really living alone in the sense of in Philadelphia when I was at Temple main campus, I had roommates, in my freshman year in the dorms, even in my apartment that I live at, I always have had roommates, but this time I'm just in my own room here, and being here on my own and being responsible for myself completely has been a very, very humbling experience, to say the least, but it's given me a lot more clarity, I think, on my own desires in life, and a lot more of just giving me a lot more clarity on the things I want to focus on going forward. And I really look forward to kind of coming back almost like a completely different person, because I think not having some of those distractions that being in a place as busy as Philadelphia, it kind of, again, like I said, just gives you that mental freedom to really think and explore a lot more things. And so out here I've been creating a lot of content on my Instagram. That was one thing I was really keen with myself on, is you got to be creating content when you're in Japan. And so that's been a very, very fun thing. Obviously, the culture here is awesome. It's incredible. It's also a very nice parallel just being in Japan, versus Philadelphia, because Philly's a very interesting city. There's a lot of culture there, but also sometimes logistically it isn't the best place to be in. And like one thing out here is the subway system here is so much cleaner and so much more efficient than in Philadelphia. It's just very interesting to kind of see, an other side of the world and kind of how it works. Because this is my first time leaving the country, even not necessarily being outside of Pennsylvania, but yeah, leaving the States and going somewhere else. This is my first time ever doing that. To do such a drastic location swap from the US to Japan has just been for me.
Right. I'm sure it was quite the adjustment when you first got over there. Can you highlight some of your favorite and least favorite things about Japan? Like, or just biggest differences?
Yeah, so one thing that I actually really love, I mean, this this is like just me as an American, but our US dollar holds up pretty well over here. For example, like I think like 140 like $1 is 140 yen, but like that kind of like adds up. So it's almost like, if you were spending what would look like, so I think like $100 here is like 10,000 yen, but 10,000 yen in US dollars is like 80 to like $85. Whenever you're buying things, it's a lot cheaper, which is, nice for me as an American, I guess, just because, it allows me to like buy more, I guess. But again, like I was saying, the subway system is, much cleaner and more efficient. So like whenever I have to, because I have to make an hour commute actually to go to campus, unfortunately. But so, whenever I make that commute, though, it's always very easy. The subways are kind of always right on time. It's very safe out here. Like one thing I noticed in Japan is like when there's like kids going to school and stuff, there will be like literal like 3 to 4 year olds like just walking on the street at like any given time, like normally of the day, like it's during the day. But I just find that very interesting, compared to, I guess, back in the States, because I think it's a lot harder to kind of have those things happening out there. Some cons, I will say, being someone of a darker complexion, I do feel a bit more like a foreigner. And I think there's some times where people like, they can look at me and automatically know that I am a foreigner, because there's not many people who look like me in Japan. And obviously I can speak the language decently, like well enough to get around, but I'm not like perfectly fluent in it. And so like sometimes there will be like, I even hate to say this because I really don't know like the proper intention behind it. Like there will be some times where like, if I stand at a subway platform and I'm waiting there, the person who's like standing there next to me will go and wait at the one directly next to it. I don't know why. I'm not going to, claim to know why, but like, there are like small things like that will happen where I'm just like, oh, okay, well, like, but yeah, other than that, though, it really is a great time out here. And like one thing I also love out here as well that I'll just touch on as well is the way they handle trash. Because it's funny because like in America, there's trash bins like everywhere almost. It feels like when you're walking on the street. Japan has none of that. Like if you're gonna leave a place with trash, you have to carry that essentially back home until you can throw it in a trash bin of your own. But in doing so, there's no litter, like virtually no litter. I won't say there's none, because like in some of the major cities, obviously it can't be helped with like, in my area where I live, like I rarely see any trash, like any like major trash, the same way you do like in major cities like Philadelphia or whatever. So that's a big thing because I'm very much keen on like not having trash everywhere. That's one thing I've really noticed as I've gotten older is there's so much trash everywhere in America. But in Japan, they really regulate that super well.
That's cool to see because I feel like Philly is one of the most dirtiest cities in the entire country. Like it's crazy how dirty it is. And
Yeah.
hold on, sorry. There's an ambulance going by.
Yo.
Like that was perfect timing.
So what's going on here?
Wait a second. I thought it would be like the opposite, like no trash cans would be like more litter of like people like just like tossing it on the ground. But I guess that is smart of just like, all right, you gotta like take it home and everything like you were saying. Kind of transitioning to temple life and everything. How's going to school in Philly?
So going to school in Philly is super interesting. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and so like I'm familiar with Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia within itself, especially being more in the northern region of Philadelphia, there are some inevitable dangers, I guess, that come with that. My apartment that I stay at, there's literally a bullet hole through the staircase. Me and my friends think it's the coolest thing ever because we're just like dudes, but like at the same time, like there's that realistic element of like, oh, like that's a bit crazy. Going to school in Philadelphia, like for me, I've never really felt for me, I try not to think about it as like let it get to me in like a scary sense and kind of just I'm like, oh well, that's just it builds character, I guess. But obviously there are like things that you'll hear about, and there are things that I've even seen like in my like temple email inbox where I'm kind of like there's certain things that like they'll report about going on campus, and I'm just like, geez, like that's a bit unfortunate to like hear that that's happening. And it does kind of have like sometimes like a bit of a mental toll just because it is very uncertain. I always feel safe whenever I'm on campus, which is nice. Like thankfully I guess that's the one like good thing about it. I live off campus, but I'm not too far away to where it's like too much of an issue. But there are times where like being in Philadelphia, it can be very it can feel a bit dangerous just because again like of the what goes on in the northern region, unfortunately. But all in all, like I said, when it comes to the college part and like being on campus and whatnot, I do feel like a lot safer in that general area.
Yeah, it's crazy just the surrounding area around campus and everything. How's like Temple treating you and everything, and like going to classes and just like the college experience as a whole?
So I'm actually not gonna lie. So college has been. This is like a bit of a hot take as someone who's currently in college, but like college has been very, very tricky for me to justify because, for context, I'm the youngest of three, and so because of that, my oldest brother has graduated college, but my middle brother, he is still in college as well. And so one thing for me is like I very much so take the financial aspect of college a lot more seriously, just because I can see how that like kind of has compounded on my parents with having three sons, kind of all very close apart or close together in age. And one thing for me is like, because I'm so financially conscious, I feel like I'm always thinking to myself, like, am I getting what I am paying out of these classes? Especially recently, as I've kind of taken a lot more agency over my own education and how I learn things. I honestly feel like, I can't say that I feel that way. And it's a bit crazy just because, like, I feel like it's so embedded in our culture to go to college and get a degree. I really believe that like COVID kind of screwed up the education system a lot, because I think now like that really like made it so easy for teachers to just like throw a slideshow on the screen and then just like talk and like, go through these slides and whatever. And like, it's fine. But like, I think one thing I really, really miss from being a kid, especially, is like the engaging education system and like how engaging it could be with like the right teacher and, the right passion behind what they're teaching. College is, meant to be for older students, but I just feel like for me, it's not educating or it's not engaging. Sorry. And because of that, I don't really think that's how I learn. And so I've kind of gone in a more self-sufficient knowledge way. And I actually I'm currently heading in a direction where I'm actually planning on taking a leave of absence year after this semester, just because I really want to explore just working full time and kind of managing myself that way. Because again, college is very, very expensive. And that's not necessarily something that they tell you, when you get into it. It's kind of just like, oh, you have to go to college and get a degree. And like, my parents always like, they always kind of like bluff, like, oh, college isn't, that bad for us to pay for. But like deep down, like, I know it probably is. And so for me, that's one of the biggest things that I've really, I guess, that's kind of how my stance has changed a lot on it. Because I went from being a film major to changing my major to then being like, maybe it's not just like the college that I'm in, but more so like just the college as a whole and kind of how the whole education system is structured right now. And so, while I do enjoy college and like, the opportunities it brings, I feel like the education aspect of it is probably the weakest one. But that's also the main thing you're paying for. You're not really paying for like the connections that you're going to make through college. You're paying for the things you're learning. And especially even here in Japan, like, unfortunately, like some of these classes I take, like it's hard for me to be like, yeah, I'm okay with, having to pay like over $10K for this semester for these classes. Like I'm taking a 2D design class, and like we're doing these like, here, I'll show you this. We're doing these like collages. We're doing these like paper collages. And like yesterday, so it's like a 3-hour class, and we spent the whole day yesterday just making these things, like just like sitting there cutting, random junk mail and gluing it onto paper. And like, listen, that's fine, that's fun. But for me, like, I want to be learning, dude. Like, I want to be learning. I don't want to be cutting up stuff and gluing it on. Like, that feels like a daycare exercise, bro. That's like something that I expect my 4-year-old son to do at his daycare, not like $14,000 of education. You're doing that stuff. And sometimes it can get a bit frustrating. And so I'm very interested to kind of, I guess, go into this next chapter of my life outside of school and kind of explore, okay, now that I'm not putting so much finance into college, how can that freedom really allow me to kind of actually grow into what I'm trying to grow into?
Yeah, it's crazy with the college system, because I feel like I didn't actually start learning until like the last semester of my senior year at Temple. And it's just, damn, what am I paying for college? I feel like most time I'm just zoning out in class with like being on Zoom and or like presentations and everything. I didn't even like going to school, like heading into like Temple and everything. I'm just like, I'm going to use this to make connections and everything. It's worth it to have like this many people in one little area. But it's like, I thought I would also be at least learning something on top of that. And it's just crazy that our education is like not where it needs to be in the US.
Yeah.
Transitioning into content creation, filmmaking, Film by Winston, your film production. Any updates and kind of just like the process of starting your own film production?
Yeah, so I started that freshman year. Like, I remember like that idea formulating very, very early when I was, very passionate about film. And I am still passionate about film. It's just kind of being in Japan, I'm very separated from my film network. And, because a lot of what I do in film is so much rooted in me being in Philadelphia, not even just being in Philadelphia, but me being with, my group of friends who we all kind of create together. And I do have plans to continue doing stuff for Film by Winston. Obviously, I don't have like a cinema camera out here or anything where I can like actively shoot projects, but that is something, consistently in the back of my mind. okay, how can I continue building on this, this thing I've set up? Scoundrels, I know we're going to probably talk about that later. There are projects that, I have in the works that I do 100% plan on working on. It's just, being in Japan, I thought was very, very crucial for me to kind of take this step, not necessarily away, but just kind of step in my own direction for a little bit, because I feel like I was kind of so much just going with the flow of my life and what the people around me were doing. And I'm at a point in my life where I need to kind of step away for a bit and just figure out what I want to do and, what my future looks like. And so being out here in Japan and, kind of exploring different passions within, my skill set, and kind of also learning new things. Like I've become more of a video editor than like, I would say I am a cinematographer, which, it's kind of like the two things kind of go hand in hand, which is really nice. But like, I'm very excited to then get back into film and kind of have these new skills and these new approaches, because I'm here in Japan. It's a bit harder to do those things, but I definitely 100% am, still going to be doing film and continuing Film by Winston once I get back.
Awesome. I can't wait for it. Looking forward to it.
Again, relating to your content creation, how did you originally get into creating content?
It's always very cool to think about, just because along with, you guys are a bit older than me, but I think, we really grew up in the age where like YouTube was really hitting its stride. And I think, because of that, like you had kids like me who would like watch these creators like, Sky Does Minecraft and just be like, this is like this is the coolest stuff ever. Because of that, like I often really was like, this is what I want to do. Like I want to figure out how to, because it just looked so fun. Like it looked like, oh, you're just playing a game with your friends, talking, and like, that's the whole thing of it. For me, that was something where I like, I grew up on watching these content creators, and I was like, wow, this is something I really, really want to do. And then I kind of started in like, I would say like gaming was like where my YouTube stuff kind of started, but then I also really got into like stop motions online, and that was a lot more accessible for me because I didn't have like a great PC at the time, but I had a bunch of Legos, and so I'm like, okay, well, let me start doing like these stop motion animations that I'm seeing online. And that was really my gateway into all of it, if you will, because that's when I started writing my own scripts for stuff. And all of this stuff was like so new to me, and it wasn't even like me thinking like, oh, I'm going to be using this X years down the line. It was just me doing it because I thought it was fun, and like I'm like, okay, well, if I want to have this, like I should probably write like some sort of story down. And from that, then eventually, it's funny, me and my dad made a bet where if I got all A's on my report card, he would get me a gaming PC. See, that's when I got into like the real gaming content creation, and that's when I really started learning video editing, got introduced to like, more of the intricate stuff. And again, it's always been interesting because like I never thought of it as like, oh, this is something I can do like even outside of YouTube to make money one day. It was all just kind of like, oh, well, if I want to make a video, I'm going to have to figure out an editing software, and like, kind of like learning it as I went. And so all of it kind of compounded, I guess, in me graduating high school and being like, okay, well, what do we do now? And then, that's when, of course, I figured out, oh, like, people actually, like, shoot like, there's actually things that go into videos, like, they don't just pop up, and so that's kind of when I started getting into that. But it's been a very, very, like, long and almost, like, beautiful journey, just kind of the way that it all happened for me, because it's something I've been very, very passionate about since I was a kid. And so now where I'm at with my own content creation, like I said, with this idea of wanting to potentially take a gap year after this semester, I'm like, okay, well, let me make sure that I'm using my time in Japan effectively if the next semester I'm going to be out of college. And so one thing I've, been very hard on myself on is like, make sure you're creating content, because this is essentially going to serve as your portfolio, when you go into this next phase of your life. So that's why I've been really trying to make sure that I'm upping my skills in certain things like editing and like certain things like just my overall writing. I never even thought I would really be doing Instagram content creation. I always wanted to, but I was also very afraid of it. But yeah, that's kind of like really just been where it's been, is like, started from just making Lego movies to now I'm kind of like, this is what I want to do for, my entire career in some way or another.
You highlighted some of the like YouTubers that you started watching when you were younger. Can you highlight some of your main influences, like a couple more people that you used to watch?
Yeah.
You like their content?
There was a few YouTubers in particular. Like, so I don't know if you guys have heard of Forest Fire 101, but he was a Lego stop motion animator. He's one of like I like to think he's like the godfather almost of like Lego stop motion animation. Me and my friends Avery, who's my podcast co-host, he bonded over that. Like, and that's one of the reasons why we're so close, is because of him and I both growing up on that same channel. So Forest Fire 101, he still makes stop motions to this day, and they're still incredible. I don't know if you guys ever saw the epic rap battle of history where it was like Thor versus Zeus, but like he actually animated that whole thing. It was like a Lego stop motion epic rap battle. So he was one of my biggest inspirations when it came to like brick filming. In terms of like gaming content, I watched a lot of Minecraft YouTubers. I'm really trying to think though, because it was like, like Scout Does Minecraft and his whole group. There was like this this one game I used to play called Brawlhalla, and it wasn't like super big, so like it was kind of like that was like the main game that I operated in. So like I kind of was able to get into that community very, very easily and like meet some of these like talk to some of these other content creators. I would definitely say like Forest Fire 101, just because like I would like watch his videos, and then like as I'm watching them, like I'm here trying to emulate, my own stuff, and that was definitely one of the biggest inspirations for me growing up.
When did filmmaking come into play?
That's a really, really good question, because I never really gave film any thought until my senior year of high school, because again, like I'm kind of getting into this like another transitional phase where I'm like, okay, I'm leaving high school and I'm going to college now, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do at the time. And I think like I did get to a point where like I think actually I do believe like at some point in high school I was like, okay, I think film is what I want to do. But I think it was like honestly when I first started using a camera, because like I like photography and there's nothing wrong with it, but for me photography can be boring. Like I think there's more intentionality that goes into filmmaking, and sometimes being a photographer, it's just more so like in the moment, like just pressing the button. For me, like my dad had a camera, and I think as well at this time I was also really, really enjoying movies. One thing I loved watching on YouTube was just video essays about movies. Like I've always been watching movie reviews, and movies have always been a big part of my life. Once I kind of started to get into this like angsty teenager era of my life, I was kind of like, film and like art and all like all of these like crazy pretentious like ideals, I guess. And so that was when I really started to like film a lot. And then obviously I kind of knew going into film school, or let me backtrack. Yeah, so my dad had like an old Canon camera, and he like didn't really use it that much. I was like, hey Dad, can I use this? And so that was kind of when I just started like shooting stuff, and it was again less picture based and more just like filming videos of certain things, and whether it was like being outside. Me and my friend Christian, we had made this one short film called like The Forest. It was looking like a pretty. It was I mean, I might be biased, but it was like it was all right. But like for me, that was kind of like, oh, there actually might be something here. And even like when I would show it to like my friends or whatever, they would always be very supportive and being like encouraging of like, oh, you made a little. Whether it's like, oh, you have a very nice eye for like shots or whatever. And that all of course went to my head, but like at the same time, it was also like, it made me just believe that, maybe this is something that I would want to pursue further. Once I continued, like I was watching more movies at this time, and, and then I went to LA with my parents. And of course, LA is like obviously the hub of film, essentially. That's where Hollywood is. And that was kind of what really cemented my desire, I think, to do film. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Tick, Tick, Boom. It's not even about film. It's about like a playwright. But that movie was really, really inspirational to me, just because of like, it kind of gave me a glimpse into what my future as a filmmaker could be, to where it's like, hey, you may not be the most rich, but like you can still pursue your passion as a creator. And like that can still reap you very nice emotional like gratitude in a way. When I got into film school, it was really, really awesome, I think. But at the same time, I had also been so passionate about film that like, that's something about me that, I was kind of talking about even with college, is like, I think I learn a lot differently. Like if I love something, I'm going to learn it on my account. I'm not going to wait for a course to teach me it. And so I was like, how do I do like all these shots? What are these camera settings? In film school, I was kind of like, okay, like my favorite part was just making the projects. It was less about being in the lectures and, all this other stuff. It was more so about doing the projects. Film, for me, it kind of felt like a very nice culmination, especially, when I started stop motion and then realized, oh, video is literally just stop motion, but like, a lot faster. I'm shooting things in like, I think my film frame rate was like 15 FPS, and my film rate that I shoot with normally is like, 20, 23, 96. That's like the standard. And it was kind of very interesting when I found out. I was like such a like brain moment where I was like, oh, the stars are aligned. And so, film just felt right for me at that time.
Right, absolutely. With all that being said, with all your investment in film and content creation, what would you say your favorite piece you've worked on so far?
I mean, so that's a good question. A part of me really wants to say Scoundrels, even though it's not done. But like, it's just the entire journey of doing it so far. I've learned so much about myself as a creative. I've learned so much about the people I like to work with, and like the stories I like telling, the kind of creative I want to be moving forward. But, if I were to pertain it to projects I've done, I would probably have to say Bounty in Chinatown, because like that was really like the first time, it felt like for me in my life, I would describe it like the first Avengers movie almost. Like it was like the first time me and my best friends came together and made something. And like that will always be so special to me, just because we went through so much with that project. Like originally, like our producer Kellen wasn't even a part of it. He wasn't our producer at the time. We had someone else. He was like, I don't know if we can do this. And then I was like, are you sure we can't do this? Because obviously, like, she was our producer. Like, she was like going to ultimately be the one dictating what we can and can't do. And so she ended up leaving, and then we brought Kellen on. But it kind of like all worked out very well because then, from that, we were able to make this project together, and we all like, like I said, I just think that the brotherhood that we built, like, it kind of felt like I said, like we had really gone from being, friends and, collaborators to really like brothers in arms at that point. And like, from that project, like I have such a love now for each of these guys, and they're so important in my life in one way or another. It was nice because we got to make that project on our own terms. Like, Caleb, you were in FMA, you kind of know that they're so against like, action and like violence and all this stuff. We were stupid freshmen, and we were just like, nah, that's dumb. Like, we want to do it, so we're going to do it. I think one big thing is like you kind of got to be a bit of a rule breaker to go where you want to go in life. If you're not doing it on your own, then you're always going to have someone telling you what you can't do. For us, we were kind of like, okay, well, even if we can't do it, we're still going to try. And I think because of that, our passion, especially together, the four of us, like we all worked so hard to bring that together. Like I can look back on it and be like, yeah, like we worked hard on that, and we all put our best foot forward. It was my first time being a cinematographer, but that was ultimately what defined me wanting to be a cinematographer when it came to film. But the amount of and also co-wrote it, loved writing that as well. Like it was funny because like when I wrote that script, like I was just like one night in me and Avery's dorm, and I was like, God, I'm gonna write this thing, and I just like dialed in and I just wrote the whole thing in like one night, and I was like, boom, like here it is, like, and then obviously then me and Jackson kind of went through and like we touched things up, but like for me it was such a passion project, and it was funny because originally the whole idea came up when we were in the class and the professor was talking about Blade Runner. And then Jackson leans over to me and he's like, yo, what if we make a movie called Sword Sprinter? And I was like, are you serious right now? And then he was like, no, wait, but I actually have something like that. And then we started really piecing this project together. Like the characters in that project are from an old script he had written in high school. Even like the original name of the project was like one that he had. And so there were so many different elements, from he and I as creatives coming together. It was a very, very like fun, but also stressful experience making that film, but like getting it done and then, finally putting it out was, like I said, just one of the coolest coming together moments I think that I've ever experienced in life. And I think it's also what showed me like the power of film.
Oh, that's an amazing story. I love that story so much. Holy shit.
You mentioned it a little bit about how hard it can be sometimes in cinematography and how long the days can be. What are some things you do to kind of stay organized and kind of get through all the long process that it takes to put those works together?
I can even speak to like Bounty and Chinatown a little bit, but even like in other high tense shoots that I've been in, like, I think for me, I always, like there's always going to be, like you said, like that level of stress when you're, on set, like working at something for so long, like it's all you can think about. And like, if it's not done, then you're going to continuously be thinking about it until it is done, unfortunately. And so one thing for me is like, I often realize that, and I really try to be a bit of a goofball on set. Like sometimes it is very hard for me to even like not get in my own head about things. Like I remember, like especially on Bounty and Chinatown, we were filming that until like we didn't wrap the final day until like 2-3 a.m. But again, it was the final day, so we had to do it because our actors were leaving the next day. Like Airbnb goes out the next day, and so we were like, okay, like we really have to make sure we get this done. And so it was really hard for me like on that day. But I think one thing again is just like it's always good to surround yourself with people who you trust and people who know you and people who will act in service of you, especially like people who can just tell your vibe like on a dime almost and be supportive of you. Because film, like when you're on a crew, like a crew really has to be like a family. Like everyone within that group has to be contributing not only to the project but also to each other. If you're pouring into someone but they're not pouring into you on set, I think that will become very apparent by how the mood is, because you have some people who are unhappy, some people who are stressed out. I try to notice that, and one thing I'll often do is just like make sure that like I'll always be checking in with my people and checking in with the crew and making sure people are hydrated. If we have a down moment, I'll there's like this one infamous clip of me like in the Bounty in Chinatown set where we were like waiting for a take to go. I think Avery was like going and grabbing his drone or something, and I was just like there with holding the gimbal. In my mind, I was like going insane, and because of that, I was singing the Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head song from Spider-Man 2, like that like montage. And I was like doing this little dance to it, and it was like a whole like sequence I did. And in my mind, I'm like, this is crazy. Like it was almost like a bit of delusion, but at the same time, I was like, I know that this will at least cheer us up a little bit more. And so I always just try to maintain a positive attitude and try to be of service to my crew members and make sure that everyone is feeling all right. And because those film days do get really, really long. Like it can be very, very crazy sometimes.
When you have these projects that you're working on, as you're kind of trying to get them started, do you have like a process that you do to generate ideas and get processes like that started, or is it just kind of something that comes to your mind, you just go with?
There's like a really, really funny text chain that me and my friend, like me and Jackson, have had this one time. Like, I think perfectly defines my movie process. Where so like the first text in it is like LMFAO, and then the next one is imagine, and then the next one is like wait ... and then the last one is movie idea ? And so like I think for me that kind of like very much defines like my movie process. Is like I'll have these thoughts, then I'm just like nah. I'm like wait. And then, like, the next thing I know is, like, this is starting to become a very, very real thing for me. And so, sometimes movies come from some sort of inspiration, whether it's, like, I see something and I'm like, oh, I would love to make something, but like, putting my own twist on it. A lot of the times I really do just think it's, like, because even for me, like, I've been, ever since I started doing, like, these Lego brick films since I was a kid, like, I've always had story ideas that, like, I've been constantly holding on to for decades, just waiting to have the proper outlet to put them out into the world in some capacity. And so, like, even, like, some of the films that, like, I have in the chamber, ones that I've been planning literally since I was a wee little boy, and they've, like, they've matured along with me into, like, whether it be film ideas or maybe just, like, narrative pieces. It's a bit of, like, the films just kind of like come to me, and I don't mean to say that like sounding like I'm like some like Kanye West genius, but I think just kind of the way my process works is like, I think it's just like I kind of have a thought about something and I'm like, wait, like actually, like, what, like I said, whether it's through inspiration or just like, something hits my mind and I'm just like, I would love to do that. There's never really much like, where I like sit down, like look at a wall and I'm like, I need a movie idea. What am I going to do? Because like, I feel like more often than not, it's pretty easy for me to just like create a scenario or like some sort of narrative that I would want to tell in some capacity.
Yeah, I get that.
With the content you make and the films that you make and everything, what would you say you want to inspire your viewers? Yeah. Is there like a message that you try to portray in all of your work?
I think it varies depending on like what medium I'm delivering it in, if I'm being 100% honest. Like, I think for my short form content, like I really have a big focus on authenticity. And I think that might honestly be one of the more like overarching things, is just like creative authenticity. Because I think, when you're creating something, like Caleb was saying, like when you're creating something, it's so easy to edit things out and change things around to provide a certain feeling. And, like that's fine. But I think especially in like, the modern day and age, and more so speaking to my Instagram content, it's very easy to like artificially create these things, not even just with AI, but like literally artificially, whether it be through edits or whether it be like presenting yourself on camera a different way than you really are. Like with the content I make, I really want it to feel like it's from me, and it's like things that I would want to tell, like not even just like the general public, but if I was sitting one-on-one with somebody and I was like and they would just let me talk forever, what would I like tell them about like things that have helped me or things that have helped other people. And so I think when it comes to like short form content authenticity, and when it comes to filmmaking, I really don't like the current film landscape as is. I think there's a lot of films that just kind of feel, I try to use the terms film and movie differently. This is something I was actually talking about with one of my professors, because like I think in some cases they are like, unless you're clearly defining them as separate things, and they can be interchangeable. But I do think there is a bit of a difference between a movie and then a film, because I think film is more focused on the art and movie is more on the entertainment. And I think for me, I'm all about kind of bridging those two gaps, because I think entertainment is more accessible and film is more rewarding, like more gratifying. And so I think when it comes to like my approach to it, I really don't want people to like watch my films and feel like, oh my gosh, like I don't want people to watch my films and be bored out of their minds and like feel like I'm beating them over the head with something. But I also don't want my films to be empty of substance and like lacking an overall message and something like that. And I think that's kind of what the film landscape looks like right now, is like you either have one or the other. And if it's one, it's going to do very well. And if you have the other, it's probably not going to do as well. Or, people are going to have, very mixed opinions on it. And for me, like, I just want to be able to make movies where this is something that I had fun. This is like a fun idea. And I think that, presenting it will be fun, but also at the same time, there is still something there if you really want to sink your teeth into it.
Most definitely. And you mentioned briefly that since going to Japan, it kind of like motivated you to like, to start posting and everything. How did you kind of get past that barrier of, I don't know if I want to say like fear or just like that, kind of like small like emotional barrier? Because I also had that before I started to post to Instagram as well. How do you kind of progress past that and put yourself out there to the world?
Yeah, man, it is very hard. Like, I think posting, like sharing personal content online, I think speaks to one of our greatest weaknesses as humans, which is just our desire to be accepted by our fellow human being. And I think that innate fear that you will not be accepted is what holds so many people back. But I think, ultimately I feel like it's a bit of like it's a bit of a like, no, it was all good, man. I think it's just a bit of I feel like it's a bit of a like, I'm trying to find the word. It almost is like a down. It's like I just think it's a negative view to kind of have, is like being like, oh well, if I post this, people are gonna like flame me for it or like judge me for it. When I think that you should kind of know and like believe more in people and like believe in their ability to receive things other than negatively. I know it's very hard to believe that sometimes, especially like like Instagram comments are some of the most violent places on. Like I think Instagram comments are more violent than Philadelphia, dude. Like people go crazy in those things. And so like it's easy to kind of get like let that go to your head and be like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to get flamed for posting this content or whatever. But I think you kind of got to get over yourself and understand that like there's this great quote. I'm forgetting where who said it, but I just know it's like your fear of loss cannot be greater than your desire to gain, because if you do, then those that's going to immediately cancel out. And I feel like it's always better to just be like, okay, well, let's say worst case scenario, like this doesn't get as many views as I want, or let's say that someone doesn't like it. At least I can have this. I can know that I did it. You know what I mean? Like whether it's like an idea that you want to post or it's a message you're trying to get across. I think there's nothing more rewarding than knowing that you did it, rather than being like, man, I wish I had done it. I think we all need to kind of be okay with falling off the bike a little bit rather than not riding the bike at all. And I think that, one of the best ways to do that is to just throw yourself into it and be like, you know what, I'm going to do it. For me and posting my content, I ease myself into it. I've never really had too much of I'm scared to post this because, like I said, I've kind of been posting stuff on YouTube for a while. When it came to Instagram, like that is a lot more personal. Like I will say that is a lot more personal. And so like, again, that's why I try to really be authentic with my content, because I don't want the people who know me to see my content and be like, that's not Blair. Like, why is he putting on this act? Like I really want it to feel, like I said, like all of my stuff to feel authentic, so that at least I know at the end of the day, I am being me and, putting out things that are from my heart or from, what I believe in. There's nothing more gratifying, I think, than when I'm able to put something out and people receive it. That's the thing too, is like, you block yourself off from, like I said, what could be greater for you. Like whether it's like my friends or whatever, like, there have been like a few people who have really like resonated with some of my content pieces. And for me, that means so much to me, because that's all I really want to do is, whether it's one person who watches it or like, 1,000 people who watch, as long as my message can be of benefit to anybody, that is all that, I really desire out of it. And I think if you can kind of understand your purpose in content, it'll be a lot easier to post your content.
Most definitely. I was talking to Jack Nelson, who's a photographer, and we interviewed him a few months back, and I mentored him when I did the LA Study Away program through Temple and everything, and he was just like the same kind of dilemma of his personal Instagram. Like he didn't mind posting on like YouTube and other like social media forms, but for Instagram it was very personable. And when he started to post his photo work, he was very scared to like get past that. But obviously like his close friends and family stayed and like, loved it, like we're supporting him and everything. But he did see like a little like follower like loss of like just like those random, like whether it's like high school friends or random people that you meet, like, oh, okay, like who the hell is that? But it's, and then he was saying how like as he kept posting, he kept getting his like follower and core like viewership and everything, and that's like the most like gratifying thing. And yeah, it's crazy how like personable Instagram specifically as a social media app.
It's almost like a transition you're making, like once you decide to post content, because I think it's like, for me, like I think we use Instagram very personally because like I think that's what it started out as. But I think once it became very populated with business, it's kind of like, okay, if I'm just using this as my personal account, I'm wasting an opportunity, it feels like. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with doing it personally, but I think it also becomes increasingly hard to use it personally, because I feel like a lot of jobs nowadays, like you're thinking about, okay, short form content on Instagram specifically, right? And so I think, it's about kind of understanding that, and then also being like, okay, well, if I'm going to, because, I've like, Jack I went through that kind of same thing where like I did lose some followers when I first started posting, but I think you go through that low period, but eventually, your audience will find you, and then you will really start to, whatever you started at, like, sure, it may go down, but then it'll start to go back up, and then it'll really, you'll have, not only are you filtering out the people who don't really support you as a person to begin with, but you're also now in the process gaining so many more people who, again, support you for who you are and what you're putting out.
Exactly. And it's so gratifying when you start to see that gain. It's like, that's why I love posting. Going to Harris on Harris is the podcast coming back.
Dude, like, I I don't know, man. Like it's my gut feeling wants to say yes, but I also like know like Avery and I are both very very busy people, and like it's very very hard for us to like both get together and just like find and it's crazy because it's really only like 3 hours of a time period, but it's like, you know, we film it. We don't have our own studio, so we film it at Rec Philly, so we got to like schedule in accordance with that, but also something that works for us. And you know, he's very busy with whatever stuff he decides to do, and he also goes home a lot, which is like something it's not that I piss off about it, but like I'm like, dude, you have an apartment, like why not just like stay here for a little bit? You grew up at home. But you know, I want the podcast to come back, and I know that I will be on a podcast by, you know, February 2025. I have some like ideas of what that will look like, whether it's, you know, Harris on Harris with Avery, whether it's a podcast with my brother. You know, me and Tehran, one of my very good friends, we've talked about starting our own podcast. And so like, I know that I want to be in the podcast space, but you know, it's about, you know, being honest with like, okay, well, this Harris on Harris thing was, you know, looked good, but also at the same time, like how feasible is it for both of us to actually do it? You know, the way that we had envisioned it. And so, you know, I don't know, like truthfully, because again, like, you know, podcasts are, especially when you're in college, like if that's not something you're doing full time, it just is a side thing. And, you know, especially with 2 people being a host, and then we have, you know, Jackson, who's like, we call him our producer. But like, you know, he's like the one who like watches the cameras and everything like that. And so that's what I mean, like, is like that scheduling to make sure we can have at least like both hosts and then someone who can like be there in support of like, you know, the cameras and whatnot. That's also not an easy role to fill either. Like be like, hey, you want to like sit here for like an hour and a half and make sure our cameras don't stop recording? It's a very like big ask, I think, especially if we're not paying them. And so, you know, I definitely can say like I will be back in the podcast space, you know, like sometime next year. I don't know if it'll be Harris on Harris. Maybe it'll be something different, whether it's through LF8 or like, you know, just me yapping on maybe it's just me yapping on my own. Who knows? But like, I really do love just like talking about things. So yeah, I would like to say that I will be back. I don't know if Harris on Harris. I cannot promise that. I will try to get Avery out of retirement, but yeah.
I feel like you'd be so perfect for a podcast space because just you're so good at like storytelling, and like ever since I like knew you since like summer and everything, like I don't know, it's just your energy is so good to be on podcast. And I was like, damn, I was like watching the podcast. That. Yeah, I was like watching the podcast. I'm like, I'm so like drawn in, and it's like rare for like me to be drawn into a podcast because I have like ADHD and everything. So I'm like always going, but I'm like just sitting there just watching, and I'm like, this is good.
Okay, well, I'll make sure I relay that to Avery because I think if I tell him that, then maybe he'll be like okay, because like, you know, I think that's another thing too is like there's just so many podcasts nowadays that like it's really really hard. Like it's kind of funny you say that honestly because like I always that's like one of the defining things of like the content. Like whenever I do something with my roommates, like I think what I do personally versus what I do with like my roommates are 2 completely different things. Like, you know, when it comes to like apartment time and like Harris on Harris stuff, I feel like that's almost like my most like unhinged side of me. But I think like, you know, for some like, you know, you said like it helps your ADHD. Like I really like think that's awesome, you know, in a way that like our goofiness and like, you know, our ability to not keep it together is like at the same time allowing other people to kind of to lock in on something. And so I think that, you know, I'll definitely relay that to him because that does really mean a lot, you know, those sentiments. And so hopefully that'll be enough to get him to be like, okay, let's like really lock in on this. But yeah.
Crossing my fingers. Amazing podcast. And we both filmed with Jeb, and he's one of your close friends, like you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast and everything. How is recording with Jeb? And specifically like that episode.
Dude, I'm so glad. Like, I'm so glad I can finally talk about that because that was like, that might have honestly been what put me and Avery into like HH retirement is because we were just like, holy crap, like that was exhausting. Like not in a bad way because it was just very very funny. But like when you're filming a podcast with your friends, like it's so hard to like remain focused and like you know me, Avery, and Jeb are like I guess like in that scenario you could call us like your last 3 brain cells during like an apocalypse or something. Like it was one of the most chaotic podcast interviews of all time in the best way possible, of course. Like you know Jeb, you know you got to interview him and like he is a very very, you know, all over the place person, but like, you know, thankfully I'm very close with him, and like when you have that added layer of comfort in the podcast, it's like we would go like 5 minutes and like, you know, next thing we know like one of us are giggling or like Jeb's doing like some and it's just like it's so hard to like stay on task and be like actually have a conversation because like we just want to goof off. And so, you know, that was one of the funniest podcast episodes, you know, that we filmed, and I was very very glad that we were able to do that because it was very very fun. And like like, I think going forward, that might just honestly be what our blueprint is like, let's make it less about like people listening and just people watching this and having a good time with it, because I think like we can definitely find a nice medium there. Like I said, just that episode was a very, very fun episode to film, and I'm very glad that we were able to film it and get it out, because even sometimes like editing the podcast, like you'd think it's not that hard, but like to just sit there and go through like this long footage, it can be very, very tedious and very like turn offish, in a way it can give you like a bit of an ick. But yeah, that podcast episode was great. Recording it was crazy. Like I definitely left and my rib cage was sore, my cheekbones were sore, but like it was a good time and all.
Oh, that's amazing. That looked like so much fun to be on set and like so chaotic. And I'm like, that's so awesome. You mentioned AI too within social media, of having people just like put something into Chat GPT and be like, yo, make like 100 shorts and everything. What kind of are your thoughts on like the future of AI with like content creation, where it's having these creators like make hundreds of shorts like automatically and stuff? Yeah, what do you kind of see the future with AI and content creation?
Yeah, so I think AI is kind of like, it's been something that we've been aware was coming, for like I think we've known it was going to happen for a while, because like, you see all these movies about it and whatever. It's like kind of like when robots started building cars, like it's like, there's no denying the future that is going to come. And so the best way you can approach it is to not attack it, and more so to figure out how can I take advantage of this, but also to where it's not detrimental to me. Because like, robots building cars is one thing, but like having artificial intelligence is a crazy, crazy power. And, I think a lot of people who do take advantage of AI in the way of like, in a way of to where it almost shows like that. Like one thing I have an issue with is just like if you use AI rather than using your brain first, because I think a lot of people will like, when you have like a homework assignment or something, they will go to AI to like write them something, and that is where like I kind of draw the line. Like I don't like using AI in that context, because like I said, it causes us as humans to lose faith in ourselves and our own ability, and I don't believe that is right. And so for me, like I really try to use Chat GPT very sparingly. Like I never use it to generate ideas. I never use it to write things for me. What I use it for is more so creative organization. Like if I have like, a story idea in my head, but I only have like some rough outlines, and I'm just like, I don't know like how I'm going to piece this all together, like what this looks like on the timeline sort of thing. I'm like, hey, Chat GPT, I have a bunch of these story beats. Like, can you kind of like flow these together for me in a way that will make sense, or like, and not necessarily having it like generate stuff, but just more so again like organizing it into a way that I can digest. Like whether it's like I have a comic idea, for example, and it's like, I have all these ideas of like, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, and this is gonna happen, and this is gonna happen, and this guy has this trait, and this guy has this trait, and this guy has this trait. But at the end of the day, it's like that's not proper organization to like allow me to really start capitalizing on the idea that's there. And so, I think when it comes to like content creation with AI, I think AI can definitely like speed up the editing process. Like one thing I have tried, I was actually recently on a search for an editor, because I was like, okay, like it was kind of like, I hate editing, I don't want to do it, I would just rather pay someone to do it. And then I was like, okay, I can't find someone who I can pay, what I can afford to do it, so I'm gonna just go to AI. But then I went to AI and I was like, this is like, because I don't know if you've heard of the Captions app, but like being a short form content creator, I'm sure you've heard of it at some point. It's like an AI like captions generator. It'll like edit videos and kind of do animations. And I bought a subscription to it, and I was like, okay, let's see what this is about. These ads have been looking real good. AI, come save me. And I put it in there, and I'm like, this looks so bad. Like I was like I got a refund on the subscription. I was like, this is not what I wanted at all. And I think that's kind of what I mean is like we can never lose faith in our own capacity to do things. Like if I had just been like, I'm going to just edit these videos the way I want to, and if I can't edit them the way I want to, I'm going to learn. And that's like kind of one of the big arcs I've been on, this week and this past week is really like learning a lot more about editing and like motion graphics and videos, so that I don't have to resort to all these other things that will lose that human touch. Because I think, again, the human touch is like, something that can never be emulated, unfortunately. And I think it is very, very obvious, whether it's like an email or like, a script or like something along those lines, where it's like you can tell that this wasn't written by a human because it doesn't have that human touch in it. And so I guess I want people to heed the dangers of AI, because I think using it too much can kind of, like I said, allow you to lose faith in yourself and your own ability. And we as humans are, we're brilliant if we allow ourselves to realize that. But when we have things that, are easy ways out or things that we can use as excuses to not do something, obviously we're going to take that route, but does that mean that it's always the best one to take? I don't think it is.
Yeah, I fully agree with that because AI can be like so scary to take away that human touch and element of it. And that's why I love when the writer's strike was happening last year and everything, that we're starting those movements early when we're slightly ahead of it and where we can just at least make like grounds or be like, okay, here are the rights for writers, creatives and everything. Do not take away the human touch and stuff. And even for me, I'm like trying to using it sparingly. Like I don't like using ChatGPT, but when I need some organization and stuff, it's a good tool. It's just that when it takes away that human element, like you were saying, that's when it becomes bad.
It needs to be like a tool, not a crutch, is kind of like what I like to say. It's like a tool, but not a crutch.
Perfectly said. So where we first met was summer. What was kind of that experience with being a PA in January for summer and then being the actor in the pivotal scene a couple months earlier to that?
Yeah, dude, it was, so I guess I'll speak on it chronologically. So being like doing the acting, that was like my first real time, like I guess like acting in a dramatic context. And it was really interesting because like I've never really liked how I look on camera, like if I'm acting, because like I feel like for me at least, like it's hard for me to, act an emotion, then watch it and then believe it. And so like, I don't know, it was like, that was a big challenge for me. And like, obviously with it being like although it was just like, the senior, the thesis, like, pivotal scene, it was still like, it was almost like a weight on my chest. Like I was like, I don't want to mess this up. And like, I don't want to like screw this up, for Josh or like, disappoint anybody. But it was a really, really good time, I think. Cause like, I think I learned so much about like the whole acting process and gained a lot more respect for it as well. Just because of like, what actually goes into it. Like, I'm here like kind of like playing mind games with myself to like get into a certain emotional state before, he'd say action. And it was like, I had never done those things before, like gone to that length. And of course, a lot of it has to do with, his ability as a director, because he's a great director. And, I've said it before and I'll continue saying it till I die. Like Josh is a great director, and being able to be directed by him, like I said, just really taught me a lot about the acting process. And it was like I said, it was really, really cool for me to kind of, get into that acting bag a little bit, because like I've always liked the idea of acting. I don't think I'd ever do it like full time, but like, I really just I like the idea of, just again, like stepping out of your own skin and stepping into somebody else's, but it still is you, I think it's a very interesting concept to me. But then, going into set, then, being on the Simmer set was really, really cool. Like, being a PA, like there's only so much that you ever really get to like have to do. Sometimes there would be like I remember there was this one time in particular where you guys were filming the scene where Max tells his dad, "I hate you," like in the house. And I was just outside. Like, I was just sitting outside the whole time, like, watching the gear. Like it was cold, and like I was just like, I was there and I was like, I don't like this. But, like, at the same time, it was also, like, someone has to do it, right? There were times where, like, we'd be on set and I, like, whether it's, like, a mundane task or, like, actually being able to be, like, actively involved. Because there were also some times where, like, because I think there was, like, some sicknesses with, like, some of the ADs. And so, like, there would be times where, like, I would get to help out on that. And that was really, really fun when I was able to kind of step up a bit. And that was one thing I always did try to do is, like, whether I'm on a set, is just try to be as useful as possible just in case someone needs that. And so, like, being on set, I really learned a lot about film. Obviously, it was, like, at the time, it was the biggest, like, actual production that I was on, which is crazy because it was also just a senior thesis film. But, like, for me seeing that, I was just like, wow, like, this is really, really awesome. And I think as well for me as a leader in my own friend group, like, I was able to take a lot of what I learned through being on Simmer and like apply a lot of it to then when we filmed Bounty in Chinatown, a few months later. And so I always will love being on Simmer because it was such a defining moment in my career of being able to be on a set with, people who actually knew what they were doing. And, that's one of the coolest things I think for me and like how I like to learn is I like to learn by doing or being or like experiencing things. Right. And I think for me, like Simmer kind of was a testament to that of being like, I can sit in all these film school classes and do whatever, but like there's nothing more educational than watching people like actually do it and seeing how that process unfolds. And so being on set with you guys was a really, really awesome time. And it was just a really, really great time.
Yeah, that was such a cool set to be on, and it was like so much being a DIT. Like I can't really do anything except for like I have like 5 minutes of shine at the very end when I have to offload all the footage onto like my hard drive and stuff. But I feel like it would be like moments where we would be like quote unquote like not like pulling around but like having fun in between, but then like with the soda video and stuff, and then also That's why I love film, because it's like you can have those goofy moments, but then it's just like going in and out, and it's just like, I don't know. That's why I love hanging out with filmmaker, because I feel like everyone's like goofy and like loves being with each other and everything. And yeah, it was like really fun to have that be our like first film that we collabed on.
No, yeah, dude, it's interesting. Like whenever I'm on a film set, like I always feel like whenever I walk away, I'm like, okay, dude, I got like at least like 5 new friends, and like, you know, like you were definitely like I said, like that Coke video I thought was one of the funniest fucking things of all time, dude. Like I don't care, dude. That was like, those sound effects you provided were crazy, man. But just like that whole process, you know, it was like my first time meeting some of you guys too, and so it was just like, it was really, really cool to kind of be in an environment different to my own. And then like I couldn't wait to get back and tell my friends, like, this is all the stuff that I like learned on this set. But like I said, just being around people who like knew what they were doing, like you said, like it's so awesome when like, you know, a crew can go from like, oh, I got a silly time to like, all right, let's talk. Yeah, you know, and so
yeah.
Yeah,
it's like so ADHD coded, it's crazy.
It really is. It really is. It really is.
That's what I feel like. That's why all ADHD people just gravitate to film, because it's the perfect like setting. Kind of moving to like video editing and kind of like more of the producing elements of it. We were talking about Bounty in Chinatown earlier, and I kind of want to go into Scoundrels and Cigarette as well too. What was the process of producing the film Cigarette, and then process of producing Scoundrels?
Cigarette was a class project. I'm sure you know remember it once I started describing it, but it was like the before. Or like it was like, I don't know, it was like you have to do like a 2-minute scene of like characters coming together or you know falling apart. And so that was what my project was for that was, okay, well, let me, you know, just do this. And it's like I've never really done a film like that, and I can't say it's necessarily my cup of tea, but I was still very proud of, you know, what I was able to get out of that, because it wasn't really like I drew from any like real life experiences for that. It was just kind of like, okay, what's a scenario? I was like, what's a scenario I can do, and then what's a cool twist I can put on it to where it's like I make the most out of these 2 minutes that I have. And so Cigarette was cool because, you know, it was like my first real time, like, you know, making a storyboard for a film. And like, you know, it wasn't my first time writing a script, but like I said, just going through that initial process of like the early stuff, like I said, storyboarding and whatnot and shot listing. It was my first time doing all that stuff. And what was really, really cool was when I was doing production for that film, one of my best friends from back home, like one of the ones who really got me into film, his name's Matthias. He drove all the way up to Philly from our hometown, about like 2 hours, just to like, you know, be on production. And so he was kind of like my AC, like he was kind of helping me hold the camera, and I would like direct the shots and everything like that. But it was that was a really cool project for me, just because like, again, it was like, first of all, it was like, you know, my first real entry into like, you know, film. Like it was my first short film that I had ever like done, put together, edited, and been like, okay, this is a film I made. And so that was like, you know, that was a really cool process, but it ultimately wasn't really my cup of tea at the end of the day. I was really, really blessed though when you know, I won the best cinematography award at the BIPOC, because I beat Jalen. And that's like my biggest, like, that's my biggest flex to even though it was like a one and done, and I low key, like he knew, like he and I both knew he should have won because it's Jalen. But like at the same time, I'm like, I mean, I got this piece of paper, so like, you know what I mean? So that was really funny. That's always like a nice inside joke between he and I think as well, like, you know, I owe a lot of my just, I guess, general, like, you know, storytelling, like my storytelling, not like tropes, but like the things that I like the most in stories. Like I think that's when I like Cigarette is when that became abundantly clear. And then like for Scoundrels is kind of like a direct result of both Cigarette and Bounty in Chinatown, because when that film came to after we finished Bounty, you know, I'm like, okay, well, I want to make a movie now. But like also at the same time, like, you know, Avery was doing Desolate Dawn, because he and I worked on that freshman year. Like we filmed, like he started the idea of it freshman year, and he was like, I want to make a feature film. And I'm like, really? But it's like I said, it's nice to have those kind of people around you, because then it's like, okay, well, if he can do this, then what like I can do it too, you know? And that's kind of, again, when I think I was in Canada. I don't remember what the exact moment was where I was like, you know, Scoundrels is the idea for me. But I just remember I was in Toronto, and that's really when it started to kick in. Like Scoundrels is like, this is a project, and I'm like, you know, I'm typing these documents about it, and I'm like figuring out what this story is. And one of the things about Scoundrels, another reason why it's been taking so long, is just because, like, you know, it's a project I'm creating solely on my own, and because of that, I can I can make it as much of my vision that I have for it as I want. Like, there's no deadlines for it. There's no real, like, you know, things that are put in place on my end to where it's like, I'm going to rush this. Cause I don't, you know, I've been very keen on like not rushing this project because, you know, at the end of the day, I don't want to rush something that I'm not fully comfortable with, you know, putting my name on. Because again, like the decision to name it, like to change the title from being like Scoundrels to Blair Winston Scoundrels. First of all, that was because of the Michael Jackson Thriller music video. It says Michael Jackson's Thriller, and I was like, yo, that's kind of hard. And so I wanted to put that on Scoundrels. But when I'm doing it, it's kind of like, it was like, okay, like this is like serious because like I said, like this is like, you know, I have more aspirations for this film than to just like, you know, let it be on YouTube. Like I really want to push this film hard when it gets done. And like a lot of my, you know, like I'm basically gonna be spending like all of second semester when I'm not in college doing Scoundrels, like, you know, and so the project has evolved a lot for me, and it's been a very, very interesting. Like I think I've gone through like 6 different scripts, and like all of them have a different, like it's funny because like ever since I started Scoundrels, the act one, like the hook of the film and the final act have always been the same, but it's kind of about how we get to these points. It's always changing. I'm actually proud to announce that I've finally, like, I finished a script for Scoundrels that I'm like, this is the story that I want to tell with it. And so, you know, now that that's all done, like, I'm really, really excited to get back and be like, okay, you know, we're gonna lock in. And I'm gonna tell you this now, but, you know, this probably can't go in the episode. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. But I actually, Jalen is going to be shooting the project, and that's something I'm really, really excited about because, like, Scoundrels right now is looking to be around, like, an hour and a half film. And so, you know, I'm really, really excited to, you know, some of our visual references are, like, in Breaking Bad. And, you know, Jalen, that's one of the things Jalen and I first bonded over. And so, you know, I know that, you know, everyone has Jalen doing, like, a lot of these, like, drama films, but I really want to put him on, like, a fictional crime drama. And I think that, you know, through that, I think he and I will both be able to kind of create a project we're very, very proud of. And I just think, in general, I'm very excited at that idea of him shooting it because, you know, I think that it'll result in obviously a very, very good looking project, but at the same time, like it'll help me translate my vision at a higher quality than I could do on my own. And like I said, you know, being the one spearheading it is like, I'm like, you know, it's like Bounty China. It's like I'm reassembling the Avengers, you know, like it's kind of like, all right, you know, let's see who we can bring onto this to really strengthen it in, you know, whatever asset we're bringing them in on. And so, you know, I'm really, really excited to get it going. Obviously it's taken a while and it's been going through some different iterations, but I do think that, you know, once Scoundrels is released and once, you know, if things start going with it, it's going to be like, damn, like, all right. Maybe people should take more time on their films. Like, you know, maybe we don't gotta rush things, you know, like we always have to. But I'm really, really excited to do Scoundrels. It's something always on the top of my mind whenever I'm like I'm just like, because like I finished the script and now I'm just kind of like in a bit of a limbo because it's already been shot listed. Like a lot of the pre-production is actually done for it. It's just I'm in Japan, and so you know we gotta get past that point. But you know I've been having talks with, you know, Riley and like obviously my cast and whatnot, and so we're all like super excited, and that's been another blessing as well as like, you know, having the 2 lead characters being played by 2 of my best friends is so cool to me because, you know, I think that the chemistry between Vince and Billy, which are the characters in the film, I think is going to translate very well because of that real life, you know, chemistry that they already have. But at the same time, I would say that they're also like the least close of like our quad squad of friends. And I think because of that, the same tension that they have in the movie is also going to translate very, very well. And so I'm very excited to just work with friends on like all across the board because I think it's going to lead to a lot more chill, like, you know, production process and that whole thing. But yeah, I'm really, really excited for Scoundrels. I think it's going to be a really, really fun time.
Hey, if you need an editor, I'm always open.
You were saying that earlier. You're like, if you have any videos, I'll edit them.
But yeah, that's amazing that you got that. I was watching the previews for that, and like it looks so clean. It looks so good.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that.
On point. Like the stylistic choices were also on point, and I'm like so excited.
Thank you,
to
man.
see the full film when it's released and everything. And how do you develop your style to like color, to effects, to pacing? Kind of like how do you develop that?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I always think about like the emotion that's, you know, I'm trying to inflict, you know, or like whatever the general tone or like I said, just overall emotion that I'm going for. Like, you know, with Scoundrels, I think is a good example because that's like one where I've really had to be clear with like, okay, what is my style of Scoundrels? And I think, you know, one of the things I really wanted it to feel like is like an older film, but like modernized, you know, like I wanted it to feel like a film you would see 30 years ago, but remastered. Because I think back in the day, I really loved how they filmed certain things. Like there were a lot more creative shots and a lot more like cool whether it's like one shot of like a cool like arcing shot or something like that. I really wanted Scoundrels to kind of feel very kinetic in that sense. And so it's kind of like understanding like what's the emotion we're going for. And so like, with that in mind, like why did I make Scoundrels like, kinetic or whatever? Well, it's again because I wanted to speak to this, this older, more nostalgic era of film. Because I think especially motion in film, like especially nowadays, I think it's a lot more like I think you only see cool motion in film in like indie films and like action films, but I don't think it's used enough in like more like just like mid-level kind of like films. And I think when it comes to like certain shot choices or like whether it's coloring or whatever, it's all about being like, okay, what's the general vibe and how are we going to make sure that every single element is, contributing to that?
Yeah, most definitely. Especially with Marvel, because I feel like Marvel has gone way off to the offside of with like relying too much on visual effects and everything nowadays, where like
yeah.
It kind of like lost.
Yeah, some of the coolest like films to me is like even like it's not even always about even like what they do with like the camera as well, but like some of them just have like really cool editing, like whether it's like a cool like transition with like a literal graphic or like a graphic sweeping the screen, whether it's doing like a split screen kind of like thing to like that's one thing that I really want to explore with Scoundrels. How can I not just shoot this really creatively, but also edit it really creatively to where it's like this film feels like it's a lot different than what is being put out now, because I said a lot of it can just be like, oh, cut. But like, I want to go a lot deeper than that in terms of like how we transition things and like how we show certain characters, even like within the frame. I want to get really, really creative with displaying certain things, especially with this project.
I'm excited, and I feel like not that like filming like this film is simplistic or film in general is simplistic, but I feel like film needs to be more, and like movies in general need to get more like quote unquote simplistic, where it's like not over the top. And I don't really know in ways where like you were explaining with like transitions, like relying more on the like cinematography and everything, like getting more simplistic, where it's relying on the raw talent of all filmmakers and everything rather than just like relying on the big like effect of the story, like the big boom and everything. And I that's why I love your film so much, because it's like so captivating and so complex. I don't know, it's like it's getting to the roots of filmmaking is I guess what I'm getting at. And then what do you cut on and do normally when you edit, like whether it's on motion to music on emotions?
Yeah, normally for my cutting process, like for reels, I think like it kind of like depends on the kind of content. So like for example, if I'm making like a video and it's like the audio is the main thing, whether it's just like a background, like it's a backing track or like something like that, then I'm gonna probably try my best to like match the cuts to the song. But then when it comes to like film or whatnot, like that's again where there's a lot more creative room, I think, because again like you can kind of take certain liberties of like how you want to go about transitioning certain things, like you said, whether it's on motion or whether it's on like emotion. And I just think that in general I try to be as creative about it as I can, especially when it's like artistic, and kind of like going back to what you were saying about like film needs to be a bit more simplistic and like let every aspect of the film work to elevate it to its highest point. That's something I believe in wholeheartedly, and that's again why with editing that's kind of been one thing where I've really been trying to learn that as best I can, because it's like I really want to have such a a definitively unique style for how I approach the Scoundrels edit. Have you ever seen the 2003 Hulk movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. A lot of people don't like how it's edited, and can like I think it's edited like a comic book. But like I really actually like respect the overall edit vision, because like whenever someone says they don't like how it's edited, they also say it's edited like a comic book. And I think that like by saying that, like you're admitting that it makes you feel a type of way. And I think that as long as that is achieved, then they're doing the job. And I think that's something I kind of want to try and do with Scoundrels is like edit it very intentionally. And because like you were saying, like I think you were 100% right. Like I think films a lot like nowadays just rely on that crutch of like the actors, the cinematographers, and like the score. Like those are like what I would say the big three are in a lot of movies, is like you're either calling out the performances, the cinematography, or the background music. But I think that there are obviously a lot other elements that like go into film. Like there are some films where you're like, holy crap, like that's a crazy set that they built for this, or like like that's crazy set design, or like that's a really cool editing choice that they chose to do. And I think that some of those things are just a lot more underappreciated nowadays, because again, like I think you have a lot more people just going into those big three, or like directing is also up there as well. But like I think that's something I really want to do, is just like, continue making sure that, I always just try to edit intentionally, is like edit without, like, if I'm doing something, I always try to explain why, or like if I edit something, I always want it to be where if someone asks why I made this choice, I can give them a clear answer.
Exactly. And kind of jokey, kind of not. I think we peaked on Pirates of the Caribbean, the first movie.
Yo.
But I just got like so much inspiration from that, and it's just like one of like the movies where it's like it has VFX, it has like it's so consistent with the editing choice. It's like that simplistic, like raw, like nature of it, and it's like it just shows that like you can have VFX and make it look good and a part of the story and help elevate the story and not like over encompass it, and like Marvel nowadays. It's like I feel like I'm
it's
getting
like
like
distracting.
Yeah, and obviously there are like we didn't peak at Pirates of the Caribbean, but
No, I agree with that statement. Actually, that's a very good take.
Thank you. But yeah, to wrap up the filmmaking questions is what I was trying to say. I don't know why it took so long for me to say that. How do you maintain consistent rhythm throughout a film and video, like maintaining the wanted emotion in each scene? Like, what are your kind of like, what do you look for when you're editing and everything?
Yeah, so one thing I did with Scoundrels that I'd actually never done before in a film, and I'm not saying that I'm the first one to have done it, but I might have originated it because I just came up with this idea on my own. But like what I did is I actually so I made a Google Doc for Scoundrels, right? And basically what I did is I like listed every single scene. I listed every scene, gave it like a proper title, and I almost treated it like it was like an episode of a TV show. But within each listing, I would also include like who are the characters, what are they feeling in this scene, what are they trying to get in this scene, and what is the overall tone of the scene, and like establishing the more mundane things of the scene. So that, whether it's going into filming or going into directing the actors, it's like it's made clear already what we're trying to do with each scene. And like I think also is on there's like how it contributes to like X's arc, or like how it contributes to the overall story, whatever. But it's kind of just like I think there are steps that you can take to be clear with yourself about kind of what you're going for in a project. And I think like I said, some people like may not think about that, and that's fine. But I think that's when you get the most reward and in the most response is when you are intentional about those things, and when you go out of your way to make these certain things happen. And for some people, it may just come naturally. But for me, like I always like to just list it out and like make it very, very clear with myself and like make it something tangible, I guess, if you will, to where it's like I can share this with everybody and they can see, okay, this is what we're going for here, this is what we're going for here. But I just think that that's kind of one of my biggest things is like always, having a certain clarity whenever you approach a project of just knowing, what the desire is and what the end goal is.
Most definitely. Yeah, I always wanted to pick your brain on video editing and like filmmaking as a whole, and I'm finally happy that I was able to today through this podcast.
Yeah, dude, I love yapping, bro. I was talking to my girlfriend before I got on here, like literally right before I joined the thing, and I was like, yeah, I get to talk about myself. Like that's pretty cool. Like I was just like, like I love having my brain picked because I love conversating, so much, especially with other creatives, and I've seen what you guys are doing with your pages, and I respect it so much. And so I'm just glad to be here. You know what I mean? Like I'm glad to be here, man.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it.
Of course.
So, like Caleb was trying to say 5 minutes ago, to wrap up the interview, just these last two questions for you. What does the future look like for you? Like in the next 5 years, 10 years, what do you see yourself doing with your filmmaking and content creation?
I would have Scoundrels done by next year. I don't know what time feels right to release it, even if we if we say we finish filming it in the first quarter of next year. I don't know what the release for that looks like, but I want to get it done. Like I want to say that it's done and say that I did it. That's like I said, I don't start things just to not finish them. Like, if I start something and I'm unable to finish it, it's going to kill me. And so, especially with Scoundrels, like, this is something that like I'm passionate about. The crew is passionate about. The cast is all passionate about it. And I think like I believe in the project so much. And so I really, really want to get that done first and foremost, especially, when I'm back from Japan. I want to continue building certain companies that I've, started, but also investing in new ones and really like, starting to build like a proper family of things so that it's not just film and creative stuff, but like I want to start a clothing brand, which I think will be really, really cool. I kind of want to get more into public speaking as well. I hope I get married. Trying to get married, maybe. We'll see. I also wanted, like, I really want to make a comic book. Like, there's something that's been heavy on my heart since I was a kid, but I really, really want to make a comic book, or like a comic book series, something of that nature. But yeah, I'm just gonna kind of keep doing my thing and keep, going where the Lord takes me, and taking it day by day. Honestly, that's all we can do.
Right. No, absolutely. You again, you kind of half answered the next question already too. I was going to say, is there any projects in particular you want to plug? Any plans in particular? Anything else you want to?
Yeah.
On top of what you just said?
So obviously you can follow me on Instagram at Blair Winston H. That's where I'll be posting all my content. Check out my YouTube channel as well. I'm going to be starting posting on there a lot more consistently when I'm back in the States. To my Twitch as well, I'm going to be streaming a lot more when I'm back in the States. A lot of stuff's going to be happening when I'm back in the States. I'm very excited to just enter this next phase of my life outside of college. And have that space to really spread my wings a lot more in creation. And so, if you're watching this and you don't know me, I hope that you will, join me for that. Like I said, I'm going to be doing this film Scoundrels, which is, I think it's going to be really, really cool. You can follow the Instagram page for it at Scoundrels Movie. That'll be, active a lot in 2025 especially, and so definitely tap in on that. My inbox is also always open if you ever have just a general question. I love talking to people. I love sharing experiences and exchanging experiences, if you will. And so yeah, also follow CNL Media.
Gang thank you.
Gang.
Well, go follow Blair on every single social media possible, and yeah, thank you again so much for coming on. That was an awesome and amazing interview, and yeah.
Dude, thank you, man.